We have officially made it. It is game day. Ravens, Bills, week 1. We dive into our full game preview and why the Ravens are taking some key advantages into the matchup. All that and more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show, a game day edition. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, and we're here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here today, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. And of course, shout out to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. Jam-packed episode. We got all the game day storylines, news that you need, as of course the Ravens and the Bills face off on Sunday Night Football. We'll go through some key advantages I believe the Ravens hold over the Bills in this one, and why I think they're in a pretty good position to win this game. We'll also dive into some final injury reports, some roster updates, as well as some last calls on predictions and honestly just feelings around the team this season. So glad everybody's here with me today. Again, appreciate you being here. And of course, if you don't already know, I'm about to tell you that we have the Locked On Ravens watch-alongs that we're going to do during the games this season. We did it during the preseason. It was really awesome. Regular season, I'm expecting it to just be dialed up like 15 notches. So be sure to tune in with us here on Locked On Ravens. It'll be me taking you through play-by-play. Then right after that, we'll do an instant reaction show. And then right after that, doing the Locked On Ravens squad show on game days as well. So much daily Ravens content and coverage. Of course, the regular shows 5 days per week, Monday through Friday. Let's dive into this thing, though. Ravens and Bills, big week 1 matchup. We know the Ravens are looking to start 1-0, and I think obviously the big point of emphasis is starting fast. We've heard that from many different people throughout the organization. Nick Moore, the Ravens long snapper, has come on and talked with us about that, you know, the next game is the most important game. That is what their mindset is right now. I think that is really important. Obviously, we know what happened in the divisional round game last season. I know that's not something that I particularly love to talk about, but, you know, we have to go back and look at what happened to Tad to move forward. Now, in that game, we know the turnovers played. I mean, that was the biggest part of the game, right? The Ravens had 3 and the Bills had none. The Ravens also, you know, in terms of penalties, wasn't their worst game in the world, but they had 5 for 43. The Bills only had 1 penalty in this game for 10 yards. Now, we do know there were a couple of controversial calls in this game. I do want to make that clear. But Todd Monken has made it very clear what the Ravens have to do, and that is play a clean game. But don't commit penalties. Don't turn the ball over. The big thing that I'm looking at is being able to keep Josh Allen off of the field, though, who, again, in the playoff game did not have a great game. I mean, he was essentially a game manager in this game, which I think, by the way, the term game manager gets a little too bad of a rep. I think that it's just been overused to the point where if you're labeled as a game manager, you manage a game. Oh, wow. Well, that guy's just not a good quarterback. We know Josh is an elite quarterback. I'm not saying that about him, but Josh did his job in the way that he didn't turn the ball over. He protected it, but he only threw for 127 yards in the game as a whole. And he only had 20 rushing yards on 10 carries. The Ravens honestly limited the Bills for the most part in this game. It was actually Ray Davis and Ty Johnson that did the most damage there. But I'm looking at the stats overall from just 2024 Ravens and 2024 Bills. Now, a couple of things I want to note. The Ravens and the Bills were the 2 best red zone offenses in the league last season. So Ravens last year came in at number 1, converting at 74.2% of their red zone opportunities. The Bills not far behind again at number 2. It's 71.6. But third down is going to be, I think, where this game is won and lost for the Ravens. Now, you can look at the 2024 divisional round, and honestly, both teams played pretty well on third down, all things considered. Baltimore had a great game. They went 7 of 10 on third down. That wasn't their issue. Buffalo went 5 of 11, so not the worst in the world, but not the best in the world. They were fine there. But the Bills' third down defense last season was 29th in the league. Bottom 5 in third down defense. They gave up third down conversions. 43.8% is the official stat there. The Ravens weren't like terrible on third down. They were 18th, but so they weren't like great, but they weren't terrible. Third down defense to me is going to be huge. Now, in terms of offensively, Baltimore is the third best third down offense in the league last season, converting on 48.2% of their third down tries. Buffalo was 7, so still a top 10 unit. But look, third downs are so crucial, and especially with my game plan. And look, it's not just mine. It should be the Ravens' game plan of not letting Josh Allen get opportunities. How do you not let Josh Allen get opportunities? You keep him off the field. How do you do that? You extend drives. How do you extend drives? You convert on third down. See how that it all just kind of gift wraps itself into one there. Convert on your third downs, keep your possessions alive, and just come out with points on every single drive. Now, obviously, for the Ravens, converting in the red zone is going to be huge, as we talked about, because this is one of those teams in Buffalo where we saw it in the playoff game. If you don't take advantage of your opportunities, Buffalo is a team that can, and in most cases will, do that. So that's going to be a really, really big thing. How you do that, in my opinion, is you start off on the ground. I think you start off on the ground and you continue to establish that early, because you can work play action off of that really effectively, especially with the Bills' injury situation at cornerback, which we'll get to a little bit more in the second part of the show. The Bills' run defense was not great last season. Now, their advanced metrics are a little better than their overall metrics. So they were 19th in the league on defense in the run game, 4.5 yards per carry. And I say this at the beginning of every year, but I measure how good a team is in terms of like rushing, passing, offense, defense. I don't do it based off total yards. I do it based off of yards per attempt, because, you know, if a team throws the ball 100 times, they're going to have more passing yards every single time than a team that throws the ball 50 times, because there's just more volume. But how do you perform within that volume is how I like to essentially look at those metrics. So I say that every year, because some people are like, well, what do you mean? The Bills, they were actually 12th in the league in run defense because they gave up 1,963 yards. No, I don't. No, I don't do it that way. I do it the other way. So that's just the way I do it. But again, we know this Ravens offense is just so dominant on the ground. And honestly, could even be both ways, right? The Ravens running the ball on offense and obviously stopping the run on defense, making the Bills one-dimensional, which I think is easier said than done considering what Josh Allen can do. But you stop James Cook, you make Josh Allen get a little antsy in the pocket, you generate pressure. We'll get to that a little bit later as well. It's a good recipe for success. Baltimore's rushing off. I mean, honestly, it was a historic year both ways for the Ravens, both as a rushing offense and as a rushing defense. They averaged 5.8 yards per carry on the ground as an offense, which was by far and away the best mark in the league. And they only gave up 3.6 yards per attempt on the ground on defense, which was, again, by far the best mark in the league. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Bills try to handle the Ravens, especially, you know, if we're talking about Ravens offense versus Bills defense with Mark Andrews, right? He's going to be a guy, hopefully the Ravens can get involved early and often. The reason I say establish the run if you're the Ravens early, and the fact that you can hopefully do that. And look, the Bills, they've invested a lot on their defense. They've brought in guys, and I think it's important to note that, look, Greg Rousseau, Ed Oliver, Joey Bosa, those guys are not scrubs. They're good players. But it's going to come down to the offensive line, and Joe Marino and I on the Locked On Ravens, Locked On Bills crossover, we talked about this. That was Thursday's episode if you want to go back and listen to that, because Joe has a lot of great insights on the Bills, obviously. And then, you know, we talked all the different matchups. We looked at Ed Oliver versus the Ravens guards, you know, Daniel Falele and Andrew Voorhees. Are they going to be able to step up to the plate in this game? Obviously, the answer at the time of this recording, we don't know, because the game hasn't happened. But you don't want to let those guys on the defensive line, on the front seven, wreak havoc. And if the Ravens can establish that run early, you can work play action off of that, because it essentially forces the Bills or any team to do a couple of things. You either have to start creeping your safeties and linebackers up in the box a little bit more. You have to stack the box a little bit more. And on those handoffs, it's just natural instinct that when you see that happen, you're getting gashed on the ground, you're going to automatically take that step up. And when that ball is pulled back and you have Mark Andrews running and it's a little fake, those linebackers are caught flat-footed. and it's easy money every single time. So the Ravens certainly have advantages here over the Bills. We'll continue to dive into those in the second part of the show. Look at the injury situation as well, because I think there are some things the Ravens could exploit on that side as well, particularly as we mentioned, that cornerback 2 spot for the Bills. All that and more coming up on this game day edition of Locked On Ravens. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right means cashing in. With football back, PrizePicks, the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. I've been playing PrizePicks lately, and it's such a fun way to stay locked in for the season. It's quick, easy, and honestly, my favorite way to follow along with football. I love checking out the projections too, like for tonight's game, Josh Allen for more or less than his passing yard total, or Derrick Henry for more or less than 1 rushing touchdown. And this week's max discounts include Lamar Jackson, 0.5 passing yards. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. And the show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. They follow what moves them every time they drive. And that's what makes Mazda stand out. They go beyond safety, style, and performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every detail. Mazda offers more than safety. It's won more 2025 IHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. As an athlete focuses on every detail, Mazda does the same. From metallic accents to hand-stitched Napa leather, you can feel it the moment you get behind the wheel. The smooth handling, intuitive controls, and standard all-wheel drive in every crossover SUV. Whether it's a quick drive to practice or a weekend road trip, Mazda makes everyday drives feel special. It's the small details to make the big plays, and just like there's more to every player, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Moving right along on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still diving into Ravens game day coverage. Ravens versus Bills, week number 1. Be sure you check out the watch along later tonight, as well as the instant reaction right after the game and the squad show right after that. We have a lot of game day content for you each and every single week, which is really exciting. Of course, also be sure you check out the regular show, which is Monday through Fridays at 6 a.m. Eastern time. We had a bonus episode yesterday with former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail, which was great. We just so much Ravens content all across the board. I love it. I'm excited for a really great season. I can't believe we're finally here. Feels like forever that we've seen this team play, because it has been since January. And the Ravens are going to obviously look, people are calling it the revenge game. I don't really feed into that. I think that if there was any revenge, and I talked about this last year with the Chiefs, if you were here with me for last year, I think that the revenge would come in the playoffs, right? This is just a regular season game. Got to start 1-0. And that's, again, the message the Ravens have put forth here. It's you got to start with a win. Got to go out there and win every game that you can and put your best foot forward each and every single week. Now, let's do a little injury report check-in for the Ravens and the Bills as we look at kind of who could impact the game not actually being in the game. So, we know that Jair Alexander and Daniel Falele, they're off the injury report. They are going to play in this game. Jair is able to notch 2 full practices back-to-back. And then Daniel Falele had an illness. He was limited on a Wednesday, but he was good to go on Thursday and Friday. The 2 that were big, obviously Isaiah Likely and Patrick Ricard, both ruled out by the Ravens on Friday. And the Ravens called up one of their tight ends that maybe could have an impact, the practice squad that I know a lot of people were talking about, maybe Lucas Scott being called up, the fullback. Oh, they're going to replicate what Ricard brings to the table. Well, they have elevated Zaire Mitchell-Patton from the practice squad. It was not Lucas Scott. So big game for Charlie Kohler potentially here. We know big game for Mark Andrews, hopefully, but he, with Zaire coming up, gives the Ravens another option to run heavier personnel with. You can run 3 tight end sets with him as well. So the Ravens only activate one of their 2 players that they could bring up. So they'll have 6 inactives on Sunday. We know that Ricard and Likely will be 2 of them. I know a lot of people are talking about 11 personnel and, the Ravens going to use, is it going to be more wide receivers or what are they going to do? I don't think they're going to stray too much away from what they do usually, but obviously the Ricard element is going to make them do stuff a little bit differently. Now, do you use Kohler in the Ricard role? Do you use Zaire in the Ricard? I don't know what their plan is here, but we know Ricard is so good at his job and likely brings a heap of athleticism and dual threat ability in terms of being a blocker, which he has improved on greatly since coming in the league, as well as a receiver. So you're definitely going to miss those two guys. But then for the Bills side of things, Tyler Bass was put on injured reserve with a left hip / groin injury. So the Bills are bringing Matt Prater to the table here, who is obviously a NFL vet, Denver, Detroit, a lot of places. He's not like a ton, but he's been around a little bit. But the big one, so Christian Benford, he will play. Keon Coleman, he will play. Elijah Moore, he will play. Khalil Shakir, he will play. Tre'Davious White he's doubtful in this game. So I'm not expecting him to play. The Bills, they are in a little bit of trouble when it comes to their cornerback spot there because they did not re-sign Rasul Douglas. They did not elevate a corner for this game. They elevated Kendrick Green and Prater, who is not on the roster. So that's how that's going to work. But they are going to either roll out Jamarcus Ingram, who is very inexperienced, or Dorian Strong, who is literally a 6th-round rookie at that corner 2 spot. And that is a spot that is going to have to face, if we're just taking out Flowers and Benford for now, is 1-1. That's Rashad Bateman. That's DeAndre Hopkins. You can take advantage and, roll with a bunch of different personnel packages that maybe exploit that. That is a huge advantage to the Ravens because we've seen what Rashad Bateman can do. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins is a wily veteran. He has been places. He's done a lot during his time in the league. That's an area that I would be just force feeding. I would force feed Andrews, by the way, because I just, not just because I want to see him have a good game, but because I think that they can take advantage of that. But if you really want to take advantage of the Bills defense, it all goes hand in hand. Establish the run early, force the Bills to stay on their toes, work play action, and then whoever that corner 2 is, just that direction. It's like Brandon Stevens from last year, right? I don't mean to pick on Brandon Stevens, and I mean that sincerely, but that's what happened with the Ravens, right? It's, you don't want to throw at Marlon Humphrey. You don't want to throw at Nate Wiggins. Process of elimination. You throw at the weakest link, and that was Brandon Stevens. Well, weakest link on Buffalo's defense clearly is going to be that number 2 spot. And I'm not really high on their safety position either. Taylor Rapp is fine, but he got knocked out of the game in week 4 with a concussion with Derrick Henry. So that was unfortunate for him, but Cole Bishop is really inexperienced and honestly didn't look very good in the preseason at times. DeMar Hamlin is the backup there. I think that the Ravens, everybody's talking about the run game, right? I think that's what everybody's talking about. I truly think that they can make hay in the pass game. I think that Lamar, and especially with I would assume they're going to run with more heavy wide receiver sets. It's not going to be, I think that people are overcorrecting in terms of what the Ravens are going to do with no Ricard and no Likely. They still can run the ball without those two. They can still have success. But I do think we're going to see, and Monken has been a balanced offensive coordinator, but we're going to see even more balance, I think, from this unit. And I think that will be where the game is won and lost for the Baltimore offense, right? Can Lamar take advantage of that? Can the Ravens exploit that mismatch? That, to me, is going to be really, really, really important. So, I guess a little bit of a shock they didn't call up Lucas Scott, but certainly they feel confident enough. And look, they have enough firepower on that offense, especially when you have Lamar Jackson, to not have to worry as much. Now, we're going to see. I remember all the conversations about Project Pat, and once Todd Monken came in, what's his role going to be? What's his role going to be? Do they even need Pat anymore? We're going to see. We're going to see. But one thing Todd Monken is very good at is adjusting on the fly and adjusting to his personnel. And I think that is exactly what we're going to see here in this game from him and this Ravens offense. And coming up, we're going to be diving into the last call predictions, some more news and notes for the game tonight, as well as just the overall vibe around the team and a check-in from another Locked On host about a recent signing the Ravens made. So stay tuned, a lot coming up on the show. This episode is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend, time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For the Ravens, Keon Martin delivered in a huge way over the course of the preseason. I mean, he was all over the place. He got the pick six, multiple run stuffs, great plays on special teams. When the pressure was on, Keon Martin absolutely came through. No hesitation, no delay. I mean, that's how he earned his roster spot after not even signing in Baltimore's initial undrafted free agent class. He signed during the rookie minicamp phase of it. If you watch Keon Martin week to week, week after week, the performance was not a fluke in the preseason. Keon Martin was absolutely on a streak. And just like Keon Martin delivered for the Ravens, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/18. Rocking and rolling on Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher diving into more coverage here. Ravens face off against the Bills. 8:20 Sunday Night Football. Huge week one matchup. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. Again, we'll have all the coverage for you. We'll do the Locked On Ravens live watch along during the game, so be sure you're checking it out. You can have the game on one screen. You can have my reaction on the other. You can pop in at times during the game, check in, how you feeling, how you doing. You know, just the emotion of the game. I love it. So I want to react to that and share that. So we're going to do that throughout the season, see how it goes. Was really successful during the preseason and hoping that carries over to the regular season. And then we'll have the instant reaction right after that. And then we will obviously have the Locked On Ravens squad show after that. And also, again, be sure you check out the show Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern. We'll have an episode tomorrow morning. We'll be breaking everything down. Busy times, but you know, I love the grind. I absolutely love it. So be sure you like and subscribe in video form and audio form. Two amazing communities we have, plus social media, subtext, the whole 9 yards. So when moving and looking at kind of the rest of how this game could shape up for the Ravens against the Bills, you know, you look at some of the other stats for the Bills over the course of 2024. And again, like both teams look a little different, but you know, the Bills last year were not like a great rushing offense by any stretch. I mean, look, they were fine. They were 11th, which is top half of the league, but they were 5th in the league in terms of passing offense. I would hope that the Ravens could shut that down with their secondary, hoping for a big game from Jair Alexander in this one. And look, it's going to be like Josh Palmer, Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir. Like that Ravens defense, to me, the secondary overpowers the Bills pass catchers, Dalton Kincaid even. I think it's going to be big, though. Can they get pressure on Josh Allen? That's going to be a big question mark for me. You know, the Ravens last season in the department of pass rush, they were second in sacks, but their advanced metrics were kind of all over the place with pressure rate, win rate, you know, blitz percent, like the whole thing. Some of them were good. Some of them were not so good. They kind of struggled with consistency last season. I'm hoping to see a bit more consistency out of that group this year. I think Mike Green being added definitely helps that. But you just kind of got to look up and down the board. And, you know, with Lamar Jackson and with Josh Allen, you can't just beat the offensive lineman, have a straight line, and say, boom, I've won already. There are multiple steps to getting those two quarterbacks down. They're the two best quarterbacks in the league, in my opinion, in making something out of nothing. You have to, one, beat your offensive lineman, and then two, establish that plan and actually get them on the ground. You have to do it. Do not let, in the Ravens case, Josh Allen go off script. For the Bills, okay, I'm fine with that. Lamar's good when he has to do that, but he is also lethal from the pocket. So it's kind of like a pick your poison for both quarterbacks, and that's why it makes this game super, super exciting. Other than that, though, I mean, you just got to kind of hope that the chips fall where they do, and those chips fall in a good way for the Ravens. Again, for a lot of those games, in fact, I think every single one outside of the Eagles game last year, the Ravens beat themselves in some way, shape, or form. You can't let it happen. It happens every year for a couple of these games. And with the Ravens having a tough schedule to start here, 5 of their first 6 games against divisional opponents, or against divisional winners, excuse me, you can't like drop, like 0-2 last year was not great. You can't have that happen again. They defied the odds. They made the postseason after starting 0-2, but you cannot do that again this year. I can't stress it enough. I mean, my prediction for this game is the Ravens win. I feel confident. It's going to be a close game. My final score prediction is going to be 27-23 Ravens. Maybe not like as close as that score indicates, but by no stretch of the imagination is it going to be the Ravens just dominating. In my opinion, look, if it happens, I'll gladly be wrong. I want that. I want the Ravens to win this game like they did in week 4 last year. I want Derrick Henry first play touchdown, boom, and we're off to the races. But, I have respect for the Bills as a team. We see the respect that Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson have for one another. So I'm really liking what the Ravens could bring to the table in this game. And, just my final thoughts on the team in general, because again, this is going to be the last time I can before the game actually begins. I think they did everything they could for the most part to get better during this offseason. They didn't lose a ton. I think this roster is the best that Lamar Jackson's ever had and could be one of the best rosters in team history. And, that hasn't even changed. I mean, they're still making moves. And actually, the Ravens signed JT Gray from the New Orleans Saints earlier last week. And Ross Jackson, a Locked On Saints, he was gracious enough to give a little minute recap on who JT Gray is. Now, he's not going to be available for this game. He's on the practice squad right now. The Ravens didn't call him up, but he is a special teams ace. And he's going to play a big role for the Ravens this season, it feels like. So, Ross, I want to play that clip from Ross, and then we'll talk about just kind of where the Ravens are as this season kicks off.
Well, the Baltimore Ravens got a really, really good special teams player in JT Gray, Kevin. We loved him here in New Orleans. Was always great to us in the locker room. Great guy. Not going to blow you away at the podium, but he'll blow you away with the way that he's able to cover punts, get downfield, and make those open field tackles on the special team side. I'll be honest with you, he's not going to bring a ton when it comes to the defensive side of the football, outside of another number in terms of depth, but incredible special teams player. He was a 4-time special teams captain here, 2-time second team All-Pro, first team All-Pro, or 1-time rather first team All-Pro just a few years ago. It was a big surprise when he got out of here in New Orleans. I know that there are times where sometimes there's like a stigma, right? Oh, why would you want another team's cast off? That was not the case here. It was a big time surprise when he was let go. Got a really, really good player. A lot of Baltimore Ravens fans might remember Arthur Millette, who also came from New Orleans, who was great for Baltimore back in 2023. JT Gray, as good as Arthur Millette was, is an absolute upgrade. Got a really, really good one on the special team side of the game.
Ross saying Arthur Millette, I'm like, what? He didn't come from New Orleans directly to the Ravens. That's where Millette started his career. I just remember Millette on the Steelers. I was just like, wait a second, I had to go look up Arthur Millette, and actually I'll do it again. I just want to, because I remember Arthur Millette's just been a Steeler for like most of his career, but I remember him in New Orleans. And then I was like, oh, he went to the Steelers after that, right? No, it was New Orleans, then Indianapolis, New Orleans again, the Jets, the Steelers, the Ravens, and the Texans. He's not on a team right now. So I thought it was funny because I'm like, wait a second, I need to go remember where Arthur Millette, where that whole career path went. But no, what Ross was saying, and I really appreciate Ross for taking the time to put that together for us. JT Gray it's an example. It's like, he's not a guy, like Ross said, that's going to blow you away on the defensive side of the ball. But the Ravens, they value special teams. They've found guys like this in the past. Corey Graham from Chicago, Brendan Iambendazio from Chicago. Those are guys that will come in, not play a huge role on defense, although Corey Graham had a decent role for them, but will just help them out in a special teams unit that really hasn't been like all that good over the last couple of seasons in terms of coverage and ability. And like Ross said, it was a surprise. And seems like JT Gray wanted to come to Baltimore. He wanted to be with the Ravens. And that's the reputation that they have built for themselves. Eric DeCosta's always looking. And I commend him for everything he did this offseason, whether it was signing guys to extensions, finding ways to bring in really talented players on really cheap deals. Like, those are the moves contenders make. I think Eric DeCosta hit the ball out of the park this offseason and sets up for a really exciting Ravens year where, like, you can just feel the vibes, feel the energy. You look at the roster up and down. I mean, you see the draft class, the undrafted guys, like, everything just feels like it's in place. Now, the big thing is you got to go out there and play the games. The Ravens can be favored or, picks for Super Bowls or whatnot, but it's going to come down to going out there on the field, executing, playing their game, and not beating themselves. Just don't beat yourselves this season. Maybe if I remember, or someone can remind me, we can come back to this episode after the season and maybe I'll clip it up if the Ravens did or didn't beat themselves, and we can react to my official final prediction. My prediction is the Ravens will win the Super Bowl this year. This roster is just too good not to do it. But again, the beauty of sports, you got to go out there and play. So we're going to see that tonight. Appreciate everybody for tuning in to this game day edition of Locked On Ravens. We'll have these throughout the season. I know A lot of the games are at 1 p.m., but I still want to put something out on game days to get everybody excited for what's in store. So again, we'll be back here at 8:20 p.m. Eastern time, reacting live to every single play. Ravens and Bills. We'll have the Locked On Ravens watch along. And then, of course, after that, instant reaction. After that, you got the squad show. And then after that, we'll have Monday's regular Locked On Ravens episode. So a lot of Ravens content coming your way tonight. Stay tuned for all of it. Hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along and subscribe in audio form on the way out. And I will see you right back here later tonight on Locked On Ravens.